All right, so I wrote a column yesterday, Panic in the Year 2024, because a lot of people are panicking on both sides, all right, about if Kamala wins, if Trump wins, they're panic. So I put it in some kind of perspective by saying, look, this country has checks and balances, which is the brilliance of it. And yeah, say Harris wins the presidency, well, if the Republicans keep the House and win the Senate, very possible, she's not going to be able to do very much. All right, so the panic right now is misplaced. You want to panic maybe around Halloween, okay, but not now. So the Senate races are very interesting. As you know, it's 50-50 now. I think it is, or something like that. Bernie Sanders says he's independent, but he votes Democrat, all of that stuff. So West Virginia is going to add a Republican seat. All right, Manchin says he's not running. And the governor, Jim Justice, will win easily in a landslide. So that'll add one team. Montana looks like it's going to flip. Looks like Tester is going to lose in Montana. It's still a long way away, but if I had a bet, I'd bet on this guy, Tim Sheehy. So that's 2 games for the Republicans. There are other close races in Ohio, Michigan, Arizona, Kerry Lake running against Ruben Gallego, but Ms. Lake has not been able to get over the top in that state. And then there are close races in Nevada and Pennsylvania. I think Baldwin is going to win in Wisconsin. She's a Democrat. Joining us now is a guy who studies all this, very fine political scientist. His name is Douglas Bennett, comes to us from Ivins, Utah. He's associate professor of political science at Southern Utah University. So I'm not going to ask you to make a prediction now because too many things are going to happen, as I pointed out in the memo, Professor, particularly the debate. But here's what I want to know from you. Usually the down ticket, the Congress people and the senators, they have a tendency to go with the president who wins, the person who wins the presidency. But this year, I'm not sure that's going to happen. What's your feeling about it?
I think it's likely that the presidential race will have a fairly significant down ballot effect this year, Bill. I think, as you pointed out in the memo, I think Harris has energized the party. I think there's no question that what happened was a coup. They were anxious to get rid of the president. They jettisoned 14 million primary votes and told Democrat primary voters who their candidate was. The candidate is Harris. The good thing about Harris, from their perspective, is that she has stayed out of sight and is now being remade into the candidate that they would like her to be. And I think that will have some down ballot effect, especially in places where Republicans have gotten a little closer. I agree with your analysis of the Trump campaign. I think they're in trouble. And I think to the extent that the president talks about who's better looking or questions Vice President Harris's ethnicity, he's making a big mistake because I think she has a record that is ripe for criticism. He has a record with which most Americans disagree. And I think if the Republican Party can focus on criticizing her, it will have an effect in the Senate races that are close, but right now leaning toward Democrats. I would put Ohio there, for example.
Yeah. Well, what I see is, I see 2 things. Number one, that Harris's support is not broad in the independent precincts. It's an anti-Trump play. All right?
Yes.
So they're voting against Trump, not for Harris. And that Harris herself is weak. She's a very weak candidate. If she was strong, she'd be sitting for interviews. She'd be going out and explaining her philosophy, which she can't explain because now she's backtracking on a lot of it. And if you look at her history, in the Senate, she did nothing for 4 years. And as vice president, she became almost a laughingstock with the border and her approval ratings being in the low 30s. So she is not a strong candidate at all. And they booted her out of the primaries in 2020 because she had no message. Now she's allied herself to the most extreme left in the Democratic Party. So it seems to me that if Trump would refocus and stop with the stuff that doesn't matter, he could zero in on how weak and how radical she is. And that would gain him support in the independent precincts, Forget about the Democrats; they're going to support her. And so I see her support, Harris's support, is very thin, and that means the polls could change very fast.
I agree. I think one thing that Trump has failed to articulate is this. In 2020, Democrats chose Biden as an alternative to Sanders, who was regarded as too left-wing for the party. The only senator with a voting record to the left of Sanders is Harris, or
I
was
know.
Harris.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And that,
right.
It's a point that the Republicans have failed to make. And I think those independents that you speak of and the people who haven't decided don't know that. They don't know Harris's Senate record. And I think it's incumbent upon Trump to make that front and center.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got the precision to do that. He's more interested in the emotion of the game than the tactics of policy. Now, in the Senate races themselves, I have two Republican pickups, all right, in West Virginia and what was the other one I said? Let's see.
Montana?
Montana, thank you. Are the Republican senators in danger of losing any seats?
I haven't seen any that I think the Republicans are going to lose. The map, of course, favors.
I'm glad to hear you. I'm glad to hear you say that because I don't want this progressive crew in the White House. I just think it's a disaster. My personal opinion, but I got to be upfront about it. So you don't see any of the Republican senators being in jeopardy, and both of us agree that it's likely to pick up two. The Senate's likely to pick up two Republicans. That would effectively block a President Harris from doing very much, right?
Yes, although if Vice President Harris does win the presidency, of course, Governor Walz would cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate.
But it's 52-48.
Right now we've got 48 Democrats, 3 independents, King, Sanders, and Sinema. And if Republicans pick one, we tie, but they could beat us with a vice presidential tiebreaker. If we pick up 2, speaking as a Republican, we hold the majority in the Senate, and the vice president can't nullify the tie.
That is my crystal ball at this point. That even if Trump goes down, that there will be a bulwark. Now, in the House, it's also very, very close. But you can't call those local races. There's just too many of them and too many people doing too many crazy things. But do you have any feeling about the House?
I am more confident that we will take the Senate than I am that we will hold the House.
Now, when you talk about we, are you coming from a Republican point of view here?
Yes, I'm a former Republican House staffer. Before I became a professor, I worked in Washington, and I was counsel to the Republicans in the House of Representatives. So when I say we, I mean I should have identified you as such, but I don't like to do that. I don't want to pigeonhole anybody. Now, Utah will go red across the board, but just to the south, and I've made that border cross many times. Arizona, which you would think would be a red state, that looks like it might turn into a blue situation. What's the difference between Utah and Arizona? Is it ethnicity? Is it Hispanic votes? What is it? Now, demographically, the two states are quite similar. I think in the case of Arizona, and again, this is just me speaking, I think the issue is candidate quality. I don't think Carrie Lake is a particularly strong candidate. I don't think she did herself any favor contesting her gubernatorial loss. And Gallego is not a left-wing Democrat. He's a veteran. He's interestingly enough, he sent a letter out saying that no one in his staff could use the word Latinx. When Latinx was a big word, he said, I'm not going to allow that kind of stuff in this office.
No, but he is soft on the border, Gallego. He's not a border warrior. I mean, he says something.
No, he is, yes.
Right. And that's the big issue in Arizona. And
Yes.
Barry Lake is a big border warrior. Anyway, look, it's a pleasure to talk with you, Professor. You're a good guy, straightforward, and we'll have you back as we get closer. And thank you very much for taking time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.